Greetings, dear friends, and welcome to this meditation and Dhammatalk session. And we'll start off with half an hour of meditation practice. So let's begin. Closing the eyes and establishing an upright posture and bringing the attention here. A few deep breaths can be very helpful to begin, and we can start to really focus the attention, just to allow the attention to come into the body, come to the breath. And we have so many thoughts, so many issues, so many happenings in our lives, and it's quite natural that we think a lot. We have issues to resolve, we have discussions, we have all sorts of complexity naturally manifesting on the mental level. And this is our chance, this is our time to allow the mind to relax. How do we enable this to happen? To actually allow the attention to move away, to rest elsewhere, to give space to the mind. This faculty, brilliant, kaleidoscopic, incredibly complex, varied, remarkable mind that we carry. We can best help relaxation, letting go, peace, calm, by directing the attention elsewhere. Let's allow the attention to come into the body, to notice the simple reality of this body breathing. To feel the weight of the body. Moving the attention towards that which is more subtle, that is not usually perceived. The sensations on the skin, the sense of the temperature here and there in the body, the subtle vibration, the touch of the cloth, very subtle, very difficult to notice when we're going about our everyday business or when we're thinking this and that. So we can really develop mindfulness, develop focus by allowing our attention to rest in the more subtle aspects of our experience, feeling the fingertips, feeling the toes, noticing all the muscles around the face, and and just allowing them to relax. Noticing the movement of the belly as we breathe. Gentle rise and fall. As we settle into the meditation, we can notice the changes happening in the breath and in the body, the shoulders dropping, the chest expanding more fully, the softness of the belly. The legs can fully relax, nothing to do. The arms, the hands, opening up, coming to stillness. And all the while, as we pay attention to the body, we can notice how the mind is able to relax. The mind is able to still, to quiet. And even if the mind is still racing, thoughts are still popping up, we can keep coming back to the body and notice also how much this body benefits from our kind, our wise attention. Kind of drinks it up, drinks it in. It's easing, it's soothing for the body to have this attention, moving around, noticing any tension anywhere. And even the aches and pains that we may have. We can notice how paying attention here is easeful. It's also allowing these places to relax, loosen up, open up, and we can investigate discomfort and see that label fall away. When we really pay attention to the feelings in the body, liking or disliking, pleasant or painful, these boundaries, these categories merge and dissolve, don't they? Things are not so black and white. Painful is perhaps intense, strong feelings. Pleasant is perhaps more subtle, buzzing, vibrating feelings. But we can notice as we pay attention to the body that these distinctions, these experiences of liking and disliking, pleasant or painful, become less clear, less discreet. We can notice this. The relief from categorizing, judging our experience as good or bad. It's just this. It's just the way it is. It's like this. Indefinable in the end, beyond words. So we can continue to investigate feeling in the body, give it our full attention, and so ease the body, benefit the mind, release, give space, give peace to this mind and body. So let's sit together for another 20 minutes in silence, and I'll ring the gong at the end of this meditation session. So we can gently come out of the solitary meditation time, opening the eyes and having a little stretch. Welcome again, dear friends. I'd like to say a few words on Dharma now. And before I begin to speak, I'd like to pay homage to the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sangham namasami. So I'd like to say a few words today about peace, about practice as taught by the Buddha. And I want to speak about a beautiful teaching in Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta 152, which is the final sutta, middle-length discourse. And it's called meaning is the development of the senses or development of the faculties teaching. And this is a really significant sutta for me because it's one of those times for me when I came across this sutta when the penny dropped. I understood about the importance of the kind of difference in a way between the teaching of the Buddha and the other practices that were prevalent in his day, and the tendency I had to practice in a way that was slightly off on a tangent. So this is a really significant teaching because it's really encouraging right view. And just to say for myself, I started practicing meditation like many of us, I suspect. You know, we have an interest in meditation for some reason, good reasons. We want to develop our meditation practice. And for many people, especially in the West, this is our kind of the draw of Buddhism, the attraction of Buddhism, to be able to do meditation retreats and to learn how to find some degree of peace and well-being through meditation practice. And myself, I slowly started to learn about the wider aspects, the kind of the full picture of what the Buddha's teaching over time. And I recognized that meditation's one aspect of the path, a very important aspect, but all these other path factors, eightfold path factors, you know, have their importance too. And all the path factors, you know, nourish and support one another. And so anyway, in this sutta, there's a young Brahmin who comes to see the Buddha. The Buddha's at a place called Kajangala, which means something like a dry wilderness, waterless wilderness, maybe a desert area. But there's a bamboo grove there, and the Buddha was staying at this bamboo grove. And the student came to see him there. And the Buddha asked the student a question about his practice, about his teacher. And he asked specifically, you know, what's your teacher guiding you? How's he guiding you in the development of the senses? development of the faculties. So this sutta is the last in a chapter on the senses. So this is the 6 senses that's being referred to: seeing, smelling, hearing, tasting, touching, and thinking. And so the Buddha asked this question, and the Brahmin student replied, saying that the teaching he's received and the practice that he does is one of basically turning away from the senses, shutting down the senses, not seeing, not hearing, not smelling, tasting, touching, or thinking, and getting away from all of that. And this is considered to be, for him, this was considered to be the best way to relate to the sense world, to switch it off, get away from it. How? Through meditation practice, through jhana practice, through samadhi practice. And as we know, the Buddha also taught jhana practice. He encouraged us to develop samadhi, to develop concentration, to be able to experience states of peace and stillness, where indeed the sense doors are not operating, to be able to rest, to be able to experience levels of reality that are beyond the sense world, beyond these bodies, and that all the experiences of having a body. But in this sutta, the Buddha was basically giving a very different teaching. And he said to this young Brahmin, this is not really the way to develop the faculties, to develop the senses, to use the senses for development. This is not the way. He said, if this was the way, then a blind person or a deaf person would be highly attained spiritually. Is that the case? And the Brahmin student was perplexed, stumped by this response from the Buddha. The Buddha went on to explain. So, to explain that the significance of our need to be able to practice with what we've got, to be able to practice with this mind and body, how to relate to having a human form, to living in a sense realm, how to skillfully relate to all of this, and how to relate to it in such a way that we're moving toward nibbana, that we're developing peace and freedom and letting go of all suffering. How to do this? So the Buddha steered this Brahmin student away from the idea that letting go of the senses, freeing oneself from the senses, allowing the mind to rest in jhana is not the way to liberate the heart from suffering. He went on to say, this is how there is development of the senses, development of the faculties. And the Buddha explained that when we experience the world, there will be liking and disliking. There will be pleasant and painful experience. Pleasant and painful feelings will arise as a result of what we see, what we hear, smell, taste, touch, and think. And how relatable is that? Isn't it so? There's so much that we rejoice at in this life. There's so much that we suffer from. We grieve, we mourn losses. We delight in birth, birth occasions, birthdays, anniversaries. Today is my parents' 62nd wedding anniversary. It's a beautiful occasion, uplifting, joyful. And of course, having been married for 62 years, they're experiencing old age and How difficult, how challenging. And we all have to face the end of this life. All that we know and love has to be let go of. How difficult, how tragic, and how much we suffer when those we love pass away. Britain just lost the monarch, our Queen, Elizabeth II, a great outpouring of grief and, difficult experience of change and transformation. Both happy and sad. Life is full of this experience of happiness, sadness, pleasant, painful, liking and disliking. How to relate to it, how to skillfully practice with all of this. What's interesting in this sutta is to recognize that the Buddha is not saying that we should turn away from all of this. The Buddha is not saying that we should become indifferent, that we should seek to free ourselves of this world through meditation practice. He's inviting us to fully experience what we feel and to let this be our teacher. Let this be our way to free the heart from suffering through understanding. So he goes on to say in this beautiful sutta, Indriya Bhavana Sutta, when we allow ourselves to be present, to be here, to be in this body, to carry this body and mind, then we can notice how, yes, everything we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, or think has an impact on us. And oftentimes there'll be a sense of liking or disliking that can arise for us. The encouragement in this sutta is for us to be aware of this, to be awake to this, to see that response. And he said, when we open up to this reality of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and so forth, then we can recognize that there are causes for what's experienced. The causes are it's kind of like you just watch the cause and effect playing out. Everything conditioned. It's coarse at this level of body, feeling, seeing, smelling, tasting. There's a coarseness to these experiences. When we meditate, we can start to appreciate, can't we, more subtle aspects of reality. But in our day-to-day life, the Buddha is pointing to the importance of waking up to practicing in every aspect of our lives. And in this day-to-day life, we're kind of bombarded, aren't we, by all sorts of impressions, inputs through the sense doors, and they are coarse. It is a constant barrage of experience and conditioned, dependently originating. Due to this happens. A pleasant sight, a pleasant feeling. A horrible taste, an unpleasant feeling. A beautiful thought, a pleasant feeling. An ache or a pain in the body, unpleasant, don't like, don't want. And so it goes on. But as we open up to investigation, as we open up to our experience, then we can start to notice the kind of domino effect, the knock-on effect. Something pleasant happens, of course. There'll be a pleasant feeling in the body, in the mind. There'll be a liking of that. Of course, this is how it is. Do I have to make it personal? Do I have to dive into that experience and immerse myself in that? Or can I observe that? Can I learn from that? Can I let go of any inclination to embellish that, to make more of that than what it actually is? Can I observe the liking and disliking without getting drawn in, without making a problem out of all of that? Just to recognize that it's natural to like what's pleasant, to dislike what's unpleasant for us. And in this way, through this willingness to wake up to what's happening right now, to wake up to this body, to dwell here, to use what we have for practice, in this way, the Buddha says in this sutta, so we develop equanimity, we develop even-mindedness, we develop a peacefulness, we're calm, we're at ease, we're not ruffled, we're not thrown around by these experiences. And he said we should practice with all the sense input, all the sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, every thought. We should wake up to this opportunity to appreciate what's going on, to understand what's happening, to witness, and so to learn. And in this way we develop this beautiful quality, very awake, very aware, and very untroubled by experience, equanimity, exquisite sensitivity, the ability to take in, to be fully present for our lives and not to take them personally, not to make a problem out of anything. So this quality, the witnessing, the observing, equanimity can develop. And the Buddha said, with seeing, we want to be so on the ball, so sharp, so awake to the faculty of seeing that whatever sights come in, we can observe immediately the liking or the disliking, and we can bring in thereby, through the awareness of cause and effect, the conditioned nature of our responses and our reactions, we can bring in equanimity, just like in a blink of an eye, equanimity can be established. With hearing, just in the snap of a finger, we can develop equanimity to whatever sounds are perceived, whatever sounds come in the ear sense door, whether they're pleasant or unpleasant, whether there's liking or disliking, we can come to that place of peacefulness, of calm, just observing, just aware, equanimous. With smelling, he said, we can bring equanimity to bear, or we can allow reactivity to be understood and therefore come back to a place of peace and calm, just like a drop of water rolling off the leaf of a plant. With taste, we can experience pleasant and unpleasant. We can see how liking and disliking immediately arise as a result. And we can let go right there and remain equanimous, just as a person can gather a little bead of saliva on their tongue and spit it out instantaneously. The equanimity can come in. And of course, we learn all of this through meditation. We learn how to be present in our meditation practice. So meditation has, these different aspects. There is the aspect of samadhi, of concentration, where we can really transcend the sense world. But more importantly, we can develop our meditation day to day in everyday life, ordinary conditions, no special conditions required. We can develop our awareness of this body. We can develop our awareness of the sense doors, and we can learn how to live at peace with what is in this way. Let the equanimity come in. Let the liking and disliking be seen, be understood, and then they quite naturally give way to this calm, this even-mindedness. In terms of touch, all the body sensations, painful or pleasant, we can bring in the equanimity, just like a person extends their flexed arm or flexes their extended arm, instantly, not to be drawn in to reacting to the pleasant or the unpleasant. And in terms of the mind, the most beautiful simile of all, the Buddha compared the mind that's practicing mindfulness, one who is witnessing, one who is observing experience instead of being immersed in experience. The Buddha compared such a mind to a cauldron, iron cauldron that's been heated all day. And he said, a thought comes like a drop of water falling onto the iron cauldron. He said, the speed at which the drop of water falls is slow compared to the speed at which it evaporates from this hot iron cauldron. That quickly we can be awake to the liking and disliking as they arise and come back to equanimity. And so the Buddha's really teaching this young Brahmin student, what is real equanimity? What is the equanimity that liberates the heart, that enables us to free up, enables us to be uprooting the defilements rooted in greed, rooted in hatred, and rooted in ignorance, confusion. You know, the Brahmins in the days of the Buddha and many other spiritual practitioners were often practicing jhana. And this is a wonderful thing. But the Buddha recognized in his own search that the jhana in and of themselves are not liberating. What is helpful in jhana practice is to review the experiences that we can have and to bring them to bear in our everyday life. And the fourth jhana is the jhana where equanimity is fully experienced and known, the most peaceful, the most still, beyond the six senses. There's nothing but equanimity. And we can recognize that this is a quality of the mind and that this quality is available to us when we open to our experience. And if we can apply equanimity in the way the Buddha is directing us to in this sutta, we can actually develop equanimity in every moment of our lives. How? By developing this awareness, this mindfulness of all the sense world as it appears right here. There's always something going on, isn't there? There's always seeing or hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, or thinking. It's a constant round unless we're in deep meditation. And, you know, that's not an obstacle for us. The danger I personally experienced as a meditator, first and foremost, was that the attraction of the jhana practice, the kind of highs, the kind of peak experiences that one can have, can be very distracting for us because we can become addicted to those. That's liking plus plus. It's like the highest form of pleasure, and we can of course become identified with that. So we want to have more of that. We want to pursue that. We can become addicted to retreats, and it's a significant danger for practitioners to fall for that, to be duped by that. This is also Mara, anything that is pleasant, we're liable to jump on that bandwagon. We're liable to be enticed by that. We have to be so vigilant, so careful. And the Buddha himself turned away from jhana practice, recognizing that the way to uproot suffering, the way to uproot all the defilements in the mind is to be here, to be willing, to carry this body, to experience this human realm, and to let everything teach us. So to open to the senses. And most of the time, of course, we can't dwell in the jhana. We are here and we are functioning in the world. This is not an obstacle. This is an opportunity. So this sutta is a really tremendous encouragement, and it's so grounding and it's so clarifying. When the Buddha's teaching us, this is how we need to relate to the senses, not to get away from the sense world, but to understand how it functions, to see, that all these experiences are conditioned. All these experiences are dependently arisen. They're due to causes. We can kind of step back then, can't we, from our experience, and we can observe the kind of beauty of the natural flow of Dharma. Due to this, that happens, of course. And to be able to witness life rather than being caught up and kind of reeling around in pain when we do get caught up in life. To be able to witness, to be able to stand back, to be able to wisely observe and learn from everything. The Buddha said in this sutta, when one is a noble disciple, when one is really practicing these teachings, then we start to recognize the weariness, the sense of, in a way, the humiliating nature, the appalling nature of our tendency to become duped again and again, our tendency to identify again and again with experience. It's horrendous. It's traumatizing when we fall for identification, when we become our experience. It's like a trap. It's like a prison. It's like falling asleep. It's like being a slave. And to be able to take on the Buddha's teachings and to allow ourselves to develop continuity in our practice so that we're always giving kind of priority to this part of the mind that is observing, that is witnessing, that is equanimous, that is calm, that is peaceful. It's there for us. We simply have to direct our attention towards this one. And the more we do so, of course, the more we can develop equanimity, the more we can develop this ability to investigate, to learn from, to be mindful of, all that's happening within us and around us. And we kind of rise above. We can be so supportive of ourselves and others. We can be so clear for ourselves and others. We can really offer them, peace into this world. And although the Buddha said, if we're really practicing this teaching, we will feel repelled, disgusted, humiliated by the snares of Mara, by the traps that are all around us, by the forgetful quality that can come up again and again, where we find ourselves getting caught up in reactivity, getting pulled down into the mire of reactivity, into the bog, into the mud of reactivity. But actually, the paradox, of course, is that when we really start to recognize the danger and the appalling nature of this tendency of the mind to get caught up again and again in samsara, that's when we start to really free up. That's when we can start to let go. That's when we can really begin to recognize that there is that which is beyond samsara. There is freedom. There is the possibility of letting go of suffering. There's the possibility of seeing desire and not acting on it, allowing it to play out and not being drawn in, not being carried along by its energy. And the same with aversion, of course, the other side of the coin. Not to allow ourselves to follow irritability, impatience, anger, hatred, but to see these energies come up. They have a quality in the body, in the mind, of burning or discomfort or tension, or a strong push to act or speak unskillfully. But it's possible not to get caught up in these energies, not to be a slave to these energies, but rather to observe them, to be able to watch them arise and pass. And the taste of freedom that we can experience as we cease reactivity, as we let go of the push and pull, and we observe this quality of equanimity developing. This is precious. This is something to make much of. This is something to celebrate and to, encourage ourselves to develop in this way. So we may feel, as we continue our practice, we may feel a sense of real danger, a sense of being horrified by the reactivity that can happen for us and for other people. The snares, the traps all around us. It's like a minefield, this life. But we're only really able to perceive the degree of difficulty that's all around us as we start to extricate ourselves from the net of delusion, as we start to free up. Piece by piece, we're just putting down the reactivity and see how this quality of calm, of unruffledness can develop. And of course, we can make an effort to pay attention and notice it, notice equanimity. Because when we make much of equanimity, then we're really offering the chance for it to grow, offering the chance for it to develop further. The Buddha went on in this sutta to say that, as the practice continues to develop, our equanimity grows, the sense of danger is present for us, and the inclination is very strong in us to avoid reactivity, to see liking and disliking, but not to be them, to observe them. As we develop on the path, we get to a point where the mind starts to clear a little, and our ability to free up the kind of knee-jerk responses, the perceptions, begins to manifest for us. And we can start to notice that the mind is not so quick to find fault with that which is unpleasant, to make much of that which is pleasant. The tendency of the mind becomes less and less one of categorizing as this or that, As I was saying in the meditation practice, we can really see how, pleasant feeling, question mark, how pleasant feeling isn't necessarily so clear cut. Unpleasant feeling isn't so much of a given over time. In our practice, we can start to notice how there's a blurring of these distinctions. The edges become less clear, and truly, pleasant, unpleasant, they lose their definition. It's not such a sure thing. So the mind is becoming more and more inclined to equanimity and not jumping into these ruts. If there's pain in the body, what does that really mean? What is pain? What is unpleasant feeling? What is it really like? If we can apply wise attention more and more fully to these experiences of unpleasant feeling in the body, we can really start to disentangle, can't we? And, the sense of unpleasant dissolves in the field of what actually is, what is actually being felt here. The equanimity is like a sheet. The Buddha said when he described the fourth jhana, equanimity jhana, the jhana where there's nothing but equanimity, nothing but stillness, peace and calm. He said it's like a white sheet being draped over a person meditating, say, like a white sheet. And in the same way, when the mind develops in equanimity, it's like everything's laid over with this calm, this peace. And then pain or pleasure are no longer that. They're simply feeling. They're simply dhammas arising and passing. So we can notice how over time our minds incline more and more to this evenness. Very awake, very aware, but very non-judgmental, very open to what actually is, open to the reality, not caught up in liking and disliking. And so our perceptions can become very fluid, and we can start to see the beauty in ugly things, the ugliness in beautiful things, the pleasantness in strong, painful feeling. There's a kind of bliss when we really dive into strong, painful feeling. There can be tremendous well-being in the mindfulness, quality of mindfulness that can come to the fore, because it's so easy to be mindful when there's strong feeling that we could call painful, or we could simply call strong feeling. And in the subtle, the pleasant, we can see, in a way, the danger, in a way, the challenge there, the challenge of wanting more of that, the challenge of getting caught up in that. Much more tricky to deal with very pleasant feeling. And so the mind that develops in equanimity can start to appreciate pleasant feeling actually quite dangerous. An inclination to want to move away from that in a wise, insightful way. So the pleasant becomes painful for us. The painful becomes pleasant for us. The point is, I think, that the distinctions no longer apply. We really are perceiving the world, taking in the world in the sense of the bigger picture, seeing that where there's pleasure, there's pain. And where there's pain, there's pleasure. So where does that leave us? from one extreme to the other, we find ourselves coming to the middle and dwelling there, dwelling in the place of stillness. The pendulum that swings, rapidly from one extreme to the other, liking, disliking, wanting, not wanting, pleasant, painful. The mind slowly but surely inclines to the still point, to the center, to the stopping of all of that. And so this quality of equanimity the Buddha's pointing to is the equanimity in the midst of the world, in the midst of this experience of mind and body. It's not transcendent, it's immanent. To be fully here, to be willing to open up to the way things are right now. This is the teaching of the Buddha. This is the path. This is the way to develop real peace, real happiness. It's so natural for us to want to get away from this world. A lot of monastics, come into the holy life because they want to get away from all the pain and suffering in the world. But we can't get away from the world. We are the world. We learn that, don't we, in the course of our practice, whether we're lay or monastic. It becomes very apparent to us as we develop on the path that there's nothing to get away from. The only thing we want to let go of is that tendency to try to, want to, wish to, push away or pull towards anything whatsoever. The tendency to like and dislike, the tendency to react to the pleasant or the unpleasant. This is what we need to work with, and this is the way to freedom, is to be willing to feel what we feel, to be here. To really be here is to find that still point in the center of the storm, isn't it? The whirling vortex of experience, to find our way to the heart of it, to the heart of the matter, where there's absolute stillness, absolute peace, and complete awareness of the entire maelstrom that is samsara. So these are just a few words on Indriya Bhavana Sutta, Sutta 152 in the Majjhima Nikaya. It's a beautiful sutta. It really clarifies so skillfully and well for us, with great similes, how we need to develop this quality of equanimity, and how we can only do this through being here, through allowing ourselves to be fully awake to this mind and body, and how in this way, in working with our reactivity, letting go of reactivity, we can actually purify these hearts and uproot the core defilements, wanting and not wanting, and the confusion. So I really wish you well with this practice. Ewan, I'm going to have a look at the chat and see if there's any opportunity for discussion, a little bit of interaction, any questions or comments. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. Rick and Geeta, Kumu, Karen, Janaki, Ubon from Thailand. Hi, Ubon. Richard, Faisal, Prasika Metika, Amarantha, RDLS, Khmer, Pa Leong Soon, Yankee Apple, Chittapala. Thanks everybody for putting kind greetings into the chat, and greetings to everyone else too. And I have a question from Faisal. Okay, I have psychic ability to see other beings than human, clear vision and clear audience. When I meditate, they always interrupt my meditation. What is the Buddhism advice for dealing with them? Thank you, Vaisei. That's a really great question. Because it's really important to know how to work with these kind of experiences. And I'm sure you're not alone in having sights and sounds coming in from outside, whether it be from, like at the beginning of this session, meditation session, somebody starts drilling or some loud machine starts up outside. So there's a sound that's coming in from outside, rather mundane. Or one might be seeing spiritual visitations, beings from other realms coming visiting. All sorts of visions can happen for us in meditation, from the most mundane to the most sublime. And whether it be in this world or in other realms, whatever we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, or perceive is to be, related to in the same way. And this beautiful sutta really gives us the information that we need about how to relate to experience, and that is to see. So a vision appears, a sight or a sound comes in, and we can notice whether the mind is jumping into liking or disliking, whether it has a quality of pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. And to notice that whole process. So heavenly vision appears, pleasant sensation arises, liking, or maybe fearing, maybe not liking. We can notice cause and effect right there. We can see how the response is conditioned. Something happens, there's a response. There's no me, there's no mine. This is not myself. This is Dhamma. This is what can be known at this point. And this is our work, if I say, to simply observe. And as we do this, we're not really kind of making more of anything, are we? Like, we're not making more of anything, we're not making less of anything. It's just what it is. And in this way, we can observe very clearly, moment by moment, the arising and passing of Dhammas. So you can see a vision arises, it lasts for a while, and then it passes away. And if we allow what's important here to be observing what's happening in relation to the phenomenon, whatever it is there liking, is there disliking, is there a movement towards or away from, is there a yearning for this again to come again, is there a wish for it to repeat, is there a tendency to recreate the conditions that enabled this vision to happen? Can I be aware of that if that's happening? And of course, as in this sutta, the overall effect of all of this investigation of Dharma, this awakeness, this awareness of what's happening, the upshot of it all is that the opportunity is there for equanimity to arise. Equanimity is always with us, actually. It's like it's clearing the space so that our natural equanimity can be present for us. And so I would say, thank you for your question, because whatever we're experiencing, this teaching applies to that. And it's the same. And it's not to minimize anything, and it's not to lack distinction between this or that. It's not to lack discernment, but it is to see that everything that arises passes, and all these experiences are coming and going. And if we hold on to them or make more of them, make much of them, then we suffer. But if we can allow them to flow on by, then we're awake to this moment and this moment and this moment, and we can be fully alive, fully and intimately connected to what's happening now. And paradoxically, it's through this wise attention to what's happening now that we can let go, move through, and learn from all our experiences. So I hope that's a suitable answer for you, Faizane. Thank you for your question. Thank you, Faizane. Again, how does Buddhism promote peace? That's a beautiful question. And I think I entitled this talk, The Path of Peace, and it surely is. The Buddha's teachings are surely leading us towards greater peace, leading to the ultimate peace of Nibbana. And so, in our lives as Buddhists, we, I think, don't have to try terribly hard to promote peace, because we kind of become peace. We are developing peace within, and the opportunity to develop equanimity, to develop peace through practice, it's quite natural that whatever's here will manifest in the world around us. So, it's like we don't have to strive to be peaceful, but rather we want to strive to be mindful, to be aware, to be discerning, and really seeing what's happening moment by moment. And then we will have this quality of peacefulness. And, that quite naturally manifests in everyday life. And it's interesting how, we may not actually feel very peaceful as we're practicing. We're not practicing in order to feel peaceful. We're practicing in order to wake up and in order to understand dukkha, to be able to free ourselves from suffering. And there can be a striving quality, and there can be a lot of effort being made. There can be a lot of renunciation happening, letting go of distractions and coming again and again to this place of mindfulness, freeing ourselves up from all the distractions and complexities, to allow ourselves to apply the mind to liberating the heart. Like, there can be effort involved. There can be even grief involved, even yearning involved, yearning for freedom, the grief of finding ourselves kind of getting caught up in reactivity again and again, and being disappointed with that and struggling with the defilements. But as we are willingly practice this path of peace, we do begin to offer that into the world, and people will often appreciate that meditators, practitioners are peaceful people and lend peace to others. We're less likely to be causing hurt and harm through reactivity, being greedy and taking more than we need. We're less likely to do those things when we're giving our attention to practice. So we may not feel particularly peaceful within, but we are bringing peace and offering peace into the world through the efforts that we make in our practice. And for sure, slowly but surely, we also can start to experience degrees of peace and freedom as we see through the defilements, see through the reactivity, let go of all that heat, all that fire, and start to cool down. We can appreciate that within also. And as I said earlier, it's really good to recognize, the quality of equanimity and make much of it. How much peace and calm is here? Is there any sense of having developed peacefulness through practice? Can I notice that? And can I celebrate that? Can I make much of that? Can I bring that to mind and enjoy that? Because when we do so, we're inviting this beautiful quality of equanimity, of peace to grow. So thank you very much for your questions, Vaise, both really so helpful. Okay, Kumu has a question. Thank you, Kumu. It looks like this sutta teaches us how we can use Indriya Bhavana as a way of developing equanimity as a Brahma Vihara. How can we develop equanimity in a formal sitting meditation? Okay, so equanimity is a Brahma Vihara. Equanimity is a, dwelling place, a divine abiding. It is a very, one could say, pure and helpful and clear and clean way of mind, place for the mind. And one could say it is our natural state. It is the experience that we can have when we're not caught up in greed, hatred, or delusion. So the mind is then quite naturally calm and peaceful and equanimous and loving and compassionate and joyful. Also, these 4 Brahma Viharas will manifest for us, and they develop on the path. And this sutta is definitely pointing to the development of equanimity through seeing. It's through seeing the reactivity. It's through seeing that which is not peaceful that we can develop peace. And this is a really beautiful thing. It's like if you want to develop loving kindness, one way of doing this is to pay attention to anything that's not loving. Pay attention to the sense of aversion, to hatred, to ill will. See if we can find it anywhere within ourselves, within this heart and mind. Look for it, search for it, consider, is there any negativity here? And when we do this, when we investigate in this way, we can start to really uproot these negative qualities and then notice as they arise and then pass away, what's left? What remains? Loving kindness remains. Loving kindness is what's left. This is like the backdrop. This is what's here for us when all the unwholesome qualities are uprooted. And it's the same with equanimity. So in this sutta, the Buddha is really encouraging investigation of that which is not equanimous, investigation of the kind of roller coaster mind that reacts positively to the pleasant, negatively to the unpleasant. To be aware of that, to really investigate that, takes us to the place where all that push and pull falls away and we can see what's left. Yeah, what's left is equanimity. So, it's like the moon obscured by the clouds. The full moon shining in the night sky can be obscured by clouds. We can not be aware that it's there at all if it's very overcast. But when the clouds clear away, then the moon can shine brightly. The moon is always there. The moon is always shining brightly. It's just that we're not always aware of it. So we can become aware of it through our practice. We can become aware of these divine abidings through our practice of letting go of all that is not that, of all the causes and flavors and varieties of wanting, of not wanting, and of confusion. So I hope that's a suitable answer for you, Kumu. How do we develop equanimity in a formal sitting meditation? In just this way, to be willing to sit and to feel what we feel, to wake up to the senses. We can notice, anything that's coming in. Is there a reaction here? Is there a response? Is there a feeling that's arising as a result of that sound, that sight, this feeling in the body? Say I have a pain in my knee. How do I feel about it? Yeah, I don't want it. I don't like it. Observing that, being with that, patiently allowing ourselves to wake up to what's going on, to the cause and effect here, is to be able to step back from all of that and to develop equanimity. So we can see, investigate in our own meditation practice. I really encourage you all to read this sutta. It's a beautiful teaching. It's not a very long teaching. It's got all these wonderful similes, this wonderful imagery that I find so helpful as an encouragement, and the pointing to the importance of considering how to relate to our experience, how to develop peace in the midst of all the physical, the sensory, the incredible sensitivity that we're carrying all the time, the openness to all that's going on around us and how it impacts us. To be really waking up to that is to develop peace, is to develop the ability to remain equanimous, whatever happens, whatever conditions we're in, whatever the circumstances. This is how we develop on the path. Through meditation practice and formal sitting, we can work with the body-mind, and then we can notice how in everyday life the same practice can be brought to bear, and then we can really notice how we can practice in every moment and learn from everything. And this beautiful continuity of practice, it just takes us swiftly, smoothly, inexorably towards Nibbana. Thank you, Kumu. And Khmer Angkor. Thanks, Khmer. Oh, we're out of time. I'll try and answer your question and see what I can say about it. And I'm going to then have to, unfortunately, close. Could you explain about Noble Truth Middle Way? Yeah, I'll try. The Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, and this is the middle way. This is the way of practice. And the Four Noble Truths that he taught were that there is imperfection in this experience of having a mind and body. There is suffering. There is difficulty for us in this life, that it comes to an end, that we get old, we get sick, we die, we lose all that we love, we don't get what we want, and so forth. There is suffering. The second noble truth is the cause of suffering actually is not all of those things. The cause of suffering is when we kind of fight the reality of the way things are, when we have reactivity, as I've been speaking about, discussing this sutta. The cause of our suffering is actually this reactivity, this liking and disliking, and making much of that. And the third noble truth, the end of suffering, is when we let go of the push and pull and we develop, in just the ways we've been discussing, develop equanimity, develop peace, develop the ability to flow with reality rather than struggling against it. And the fourth noble truth, and perhaps the most important for us to really study and investigate, is the way to come out of suffering, which is the Eightfold Path. And I can't say more about that at the moment, but I encourage you to Google it and study and consider all the Eightfold Path factors, how to practice the path of peace. Thank you very much, Khmer, for your great question. And yeah, thanks everybody. I'm sorry I can't answer your last questions. Wish you all well, and I trust totally that your questions, if you consider them and meditate on them, will be answered by the teacher right there with you. Your own wisdom, your own mindfulness. Thanks everybody so much for your wise attention, and look forward to hopefully meeting with you again. And meantime, all blessings for your practice. Be well.